You are listening to How to Get Over Your Ex, episode number 246, Integrated Grief. Welcome to How to Get Over Your Ex, a podcast on getting over your ex without it just taking time. I'm your host, breakup coach Dorothy. Let's turn your pain into power and your heartbreak into happy. Hello, beautiful brave hearts. I hope you are having a fabulous day, even if it's a difficult one. It takes one thought, just as a reminder, one thought, one idea, one perspective, one shift to turn this day around. So today I want to talk to you about integrated grief. I was chatting with a friend, which, by the way, I am a huge fan of Voxer. Have you guys heard of Voxer? It's like you can chat back and forth like a walkie-talkie. It is literally one of my favorite tools. I was on a Voxer day with a client where we just coached back and forth. And then I've got a lot of coach friends on there that I love to hang out with on Voxer. It is so much fun. It reminds me of a private podcast, like specially curated for me. That was a total side note. It's not a sales pitch or anything. Voxer doesn't know who I am. I just love Voxer. But anyways, I was chatting with a friend, or perhaps this was a client conversation, to be quite honest, in terms of integrated grief and integrating grief into a full life experience. Like, why do we expect to get rid of grief and never experience it again? And what would it look like to use grief to form who we are? To use grief as art, to create who we are through the grief that we experience. I feel like that's kind of what I did in my life. That's what I have experienced in the last 5 to 6 years with all of the heartbreak that I have personally experienced, right? From the heartbreaking rock bottom breakup that I experienced, it's like the grief left a scar or something, but instead of seeing it as a scar, I've really started to integrate it in my life fully as a beauty mark. And same thing with the miscarriage. I'm finally out of that to the point where I'm like, that grief that I experienced is beautiful, beautiful. And how have I infused grief into my life and into my experience? And I was like, oh my gosh, this is like a whole concept. This is integrated grief. It's taking grief and integrating it into your life. In one of the miscarriage support groups that I found myself in, they had shared this like circle box analogy around grief. I Googled it and I was trying to find it, but I wasn't able to find it. I found like a ball in a box analogy, but it wasn't the one that I was looking for. So if anyone does know what this is, email us at care@dorothyabjohnson.com, and we'd love to give credit where credit's due. But I want you to imagine a ball or a circle. I say a ball because of that other one, but it's a circle. Imagine a circle, and that circle is your grief, and it sits in a box, and that box is your life. And right now, that circle may be as big as the box, so it feels all-consuming. However, as you live more life, that box begins to grow. And the grief isn't shrinking, like the circle isn't shrinking, but the box is getting bigger and it's growing, and you begin to add more things into that box to make up your life. And then all of a sudden, plants start forming and growing around the grief, making it look like it's a part of you rather than just this all-consuming circle that feels out of place. And I feel like that is a beautiful analogy, especially for those of us who don't want to necessarily like forget that this thing happened. You know, there are times where we're like in the thick of it and can we please just erase the mind? But we don't want to forget the grief or the experience, but we want to make meaning out of it. We want to make art. We want to show ourselves power through this experience. And this is what I would call integrated grief. It's a way of integrating grief from any sort of heartbreak into your life. And not in a victim mentality way, right? There's a completely different, experience or energy behind it, but in a very meaningful, heartfelt way. So if you feel like working on this and you feel like you're in this space where I really want to figure out how to make integrated grief take place in my life or experience integrated grief, I have a series of questions I'd love for you to journal on and contemplate and maybe just sit with today to see what comes up for you to really help you begin this process of integrating grief. And I really encourage you, no matter what stage you are in your breakup or your heartbreak or your divorce, no matter what stage you are, maybe it's the beginning stages and you're just now like, you're really in the depths of despair, you're really experiencing this grief, try to do this exercise still. And maybe you do it multiple times throughout your experience. Maybe you're in the middle of it, right? You're in the process of rebuilding this relationship with yourself, creating closure, rewriting your breakup story. And you can ask yourself these questions now. And then perhaps maybe on the other side of it, you're over your ex and you're building your bigger and better life. I still encourage you to think back on this grief and allow yourself to ask yourself these questions and move through these questions. And perhaps it's been a really long time and you're like, Dorothy, I'm a long time listener. I've been over my ex and into 2 or 3 different other relationships and I'm good. Still, I want to encourage you to see how you can integrate grief into your life. And this way, the reason that this was coming up for the person I was speaking to was grief had popped up in a way that kind of alarmed her because she had really done the work to get over her ex. She had reduced desire, reduced attachment, and again, she was finding herself feeling grief. And we recently released the podcast episode, Getting Over Your Ex versus Grief, and we talked about the difference between you can totally be over your ex but still experience grief, and grief is separate even though it's a part of the getting over your ex process. But what was so profound is through that conversation, we really looked at how can we integrate grief throughout our entire life? Because I hate to tell everybody this, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I don't think that this breakup or divorce is going to be the first and the last time. Not the first, it might be the first time. It won't be the last time you experience grief in your life, whether it's from this event or from something completely different. And learning to integrate grief throughout this human experience is going to be beautiful because grief is beautiful. There's so much power. There's so much art and there's so much beauty in grief. Look at Taylor Swift's last album, right? Depending on when you're listening to this, it was her, I don't even remember what it's called, TTP something. Oh, Tortured something Poets Department. Great album, right? But that is something that she took her grief and really turned it into beauty, absolute beauty, right? Okay, so anyways, I was saying the reason I want you to explore these questions, no matter where you are in your journey, is anytime that this grief does pop up, you don't have to be alarmed. You don't have to think something's gone wrong and you don't have to worry you'll slide back into like a depression. But you can truthfully know that this is a part of your human experience. Nothing's gone wrong here. And this is a part of who you are and a part of your makeup. And that's a beautiful thing. It's a beauty mark, not a scar. So here are a couple of questions that I'd love for you to work through. The first one is, in what way is this grief invited to and actually welcomed to my life? A lot of times we notice grief come up and instantly we shun it away. We resist it. We're so afraid of it, especially when we've had a little bit of time that has passed. We've been feeling a little bit good. We've been feeling good for like 3 days in a row after having an extremely long period of time feeling so sad, right? And what if we then integrated this grief into your life and you've welcomed it, right? And when you do this, you'll notice that grief doesn't last as long. It doesn't last forever, nor does it create a backslide when you welcome it. If you resist it, I notice we've taken a couple steps forward and a couple steps back. And again, that's not good or bad or right or wrong. It's just a different experience. The second question I encourage you to look at is, if I knew I was writing the story of my life, how would this moment, how would this grief, this event be a pivotal point for the main character? How would he or she use this to paint the picture of their ideal life? Right? Without my heartbreaks, Braveheart, I wouldn't be here with you today. I wouldn't be sharing these stories. I wouldn't have a podcast. I wouldn't be a teacher or a role model or a mentor or a coach. I cannot imagine a world without the grief I've experienced. And although I don't want to be forever in a space of grief, and I'm not, I do allow it to be a part of my story and a part of my journey. And it is a part of who I am. I do allow those beauty marks to show. I don't cover them up with scarves. I don't cover them up with a shirt or a long sleeve shirt. They're shown. I share these stories. I share this grief. And how can that be true for you? And then the last question that I'd love for you to explore is, if this grief was a beauty mark, what shape would it be? What color would it be? What message would it leave? And for me, heartbreak around my breakup, like that beauty mark would probably be a tattoo of like, it's all happening for me, not to me. Or perhaps like a strong warrior woman, because it's just helped me not only stand strong in my own, but it's also helped me lead so many other badass Bravehearts into becoming these warriors, these beautiful warriors for themselves. And that is something I'm forever grateful to be a part of. And then for the miscarriage grief, I'd say that maybe it would be a dove. I feel so humbled by that experience. I feel free from that experience, and I'm so grateful for the gift of non-attachment that it taught me, and learning about the attachment cycle that's led to so many other dreams that I'm not sure my eyes would have opened up to. Oh my God, that's a really good one. Like perhaps instead of a dove, it would be like a third eye, just because it's opened my eyes up to so much in this world that I didn't really think that I would have another moment, like an aha moment, like when I learned thoughts create feelings. That was such an eye-opening moment for me. I didn't know that that was available on an even deeper level until I went through this miscarriage. So go ahead, explore these questions for yourself to see how you integrate your grief in life rather than shun it away, and help your grief shape you instead of hiding it away. There's so much beauty, art, power in that grief. So much beauty, so much art, and so much power. All right, my beautiful brave hearts, I love you so much. I hope you have a magical day, and I will talk to you next time. If you're loving the How to Get Over Your Ex podcast and you want to learn how to get over your ex in 3 months or less to build a life better than the one you thought you had with your ex, I would like to personally invite you to my next group course, where we take everything you've learned here on the podcast and apply it to your life. Come check it out at www.lifecoachdorothy.com.